We are more than a week into the NBA season, Corey, and I feel like there's still just a million questions that haven't been answered. Like, we just don't know a lot about a lot of things yet. But we'll start with the Golden State Warriors, 2-2 to start the season. Corey, what do you make of them so far?
I think they need to become a better defensive team. Coach Kerr said it, during one of the blowouts. I think it was the Bucks game. He's like, we're giving up 30 points per quarter. That's just not acceptable. So for me, it has to start from the defensive end for the Warriors. But I do like what I'm seeing. I like Wiggins. I like what he's putting out there. One of my favorite players off the bench was Marquise Chris. I really liked what he was doing before he got injured, which to me was really tragic to see him coming into his own and then get injured. But I think there are a lot of pieces there. But the question is, can they be competitive in the West? And Kurt, what do you think? Do you think they can kind of go towards the top of the West?
First off, I kind of think this is what they are, right? I mean, as much as it's a little early to tell, and Steph Curry has looked great most of the time. The problem is, look, who did they lost to? Two elite teams. They lost to Brooklyn and Milwaukee. They beat Detroit and Chicago. They beat lesser teams that they kind of should beat if you're a playoff team. That's probably who they are, right? That's probably where they fall. And for me, yeah, the defense has got to get better. There's stuff to focus on. But at this point, for me, their season has to become a lot about getting James Wiseman minutes. Because if you're going to compete next year, you get Clay back. And remember, they get Draymond back this year, which will obviously help the defense to a large degree. But absolutely, if you're going to run next year with Steph, Clay, Draymond, you still need that center. You need somebody in the middle who can block shots and protect. And James Wiseman has shown the athleticism to be that guy. I mean, he makes some freakish athletic plays out there. But he also looks like a guy who played 3 games in college. His feel for the game is he's still just kind of a chicken with his head cut off at points, especially on the defensive end, which comes back to those other issues. I think you've just got to get him a lot of run and figure it out as you go. Be the best team you can this year. But if you can build him up and help him make a leap next year, then you're poised for the kind of run they really want to make.
Let me ask you a question, Kurt. So if you get Draymond back in top form, Wiseman's playing well, where do you think this team will finish? Do you think they're like 8-5 seed in the West? Do you think they're a playoff contender? What do you think?
Yeah, 5 might be a little high. I was going to say 6 on the top end, or 7. I picture them in the play-in games, honestly, but possibly hosting one. Like the West, again, as we've talked about before, and everybody, it's so deep. And there's just no margin for error. They're a really good team, and the Lakers are 2-2. Come on, I think they're going to be better than that. But, there's just no margin for error. If the Lakers take a night off and don't come out focused against Portland, they lose. It's that kind of Western Conference. And I'm not sure the Warriors on their best night are going to beat a number of focused teams in the West right now.
Yeah, and the one issue for me that keeps coming up with the Warriors too is depth. I love, obviously, Steph Curry's going to do his thing. The question was, once again, who can fill up Klay Thompson's production, which obviously, he's one of the best players, and at least in my generation to come out. So not many people can. But Oubre has been playing really well in the preseason, and then recently, he hasn't really had that spark. He hasn't provided that kind of spark that the Warriors needed. So for me, the question is, who's going to continue to produce for them coming off the bench or on the second team? Because I just haven't seen that.
Yeah, they haven't seen that. Wiseman has been, frankly, Wiseman. Like, he has those really great nights, and then he has the nights where he kind of he's Homer backing into the bushes, right? Like, it's just,
well, he's a rookie, So.
You just don't quite know. They need more consistency out of him. There's potential there. I still like the potential of this team, but they are a long way from living up to it.
One team, though, that has been able to, I think, move maybe from potential into maybe we need to give them a little more respect, and that is Atlanta Hawks. They're up 3-0 right now. What is your first take of this Hawks team?
First off, they're playing really good defense. And to me, that's one of the things that leaped out, because I just didn't think they were going to be that good defensively. They're playing good defense, and they're doing it without a bunch of guys. I mean, Clint Capella, Okongwu in the middle, there's no real rim protection behind them, and yet they're finding a way to get enough stops. And obviously, Trae Young's Trae Young, right? Trae Young is 34 points a game, 40% from 3. Playing at this ridiculous level. But I've been impressed with their defense. I was impressed with DeAndre Hunter, who's taken a step forward for them and given them something meaningful this year. So I look forward to a real test coming up for them. They kind of beaten up on lesser teams. But that said, they won the games they were supposed to, Corey. That's got to matter for something, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the way that I kind of look at teams is, are you going to basically you have the playoff, the championship contender teams, then you have a team that says, let's get better than we were last year, right? Like, how can we improve this year? And then you have the teams who are just kind of in the rebuilding phase. And I feel like Atlanta's in the second category where they're like, hey, we weren't very good last year. How can we take tangible steps forward to get ourselves into a position where we can actually see progress? We're not going to be a championship contender right off the bat, but we are seeing progress in Atlanta right now. And it has to be encouraging if you're an Atlanta Hawks fan or if you're part of that organization. You can see Trae Young really settling into his own. Like you said, he's putting up crazy numbers. But the most important thing is everyone else is stepping up and elevating their levels as well around him. Kevin Huerter, you have Collins playing at a high level consistently. Bogdanovic appears to be a nice fit for them, getting valuable minutes. So I'm looking at that saying this is a step forward, which is squarely fits you in that second category. But the question is, can you beat Brooklyn, who's one of the top contenders in the league? And that's what we're going to see. Yeah,
that's what we're going to see over the next few days. The schedule gets tougher for them, and we'll get a better sense. I mean, Brooklyn has been elite when Kevin Durant plays, and not as good when he doesn't. But that's still. I mean, these are real tests coming up for them. And that said, I'm with you. I think the progress they're making, the progress you can see already, and they didn't have Gallinari for a game, and he's going to be a key part. He's going to get them some wins because he's going to have nights where he's knocking everything down. I really like the way this team is constructed, and my only concern was that they were just going to have to outscore teams, and if they play respectable defense, they're going to be really tough to beat because their offense is already elite this season, and I expect, frankly, they're going to stay elite most of the season with the pieces they have.
It almost reminds me of in college football, where it's just one of those like Pac-12 offenses, or one of the Big 12 offenses where it's just like we're gonna put up crazy numbers, right? But like you said, there's no defense. So
are you insulting Oregon? Is that what's going on here?
No, never. I would never do such a thing. But it's interesting because if Atlanta, like you said, if they could just play respectable defense, they have a powder keg on the offensive side. You never know when Trae Young's going to go 5 for 6 from 3-point land. At any moment, it could go off. So as an opposing defense, opposing team, you must be a little sweating a little bit in your sleep because you're thinking, okay, they can go on a run at any moment. And then now they're showing the kind of the maturity to close out games where Trae Young's finishing for them down the stretch, which separates a bad team from a good team. If they can consistently do that down the season, they're gonna present a lot of trouble for some of these other teams that are trying to fight for that 8-9 seed.
Yeah, and maybe this team is better than that. Like I said, I think you and I both kind of had them in maybe they host it, but they're probably in the play-in games, and maybe they're better than that. Maybe they're a 5-6 seed that doesn't have to deal with that the way they're playing right now.
One team that I'm really excited to see more of was the Memphis Grizzlies this season, Kurt. And then terrible news with Ja Morant. He fell such in a weird way on his ankle, was wheeled back into the locker room, and it came out. X-rays were negative, thankfully, but he will be out 3 to 5 weeks with a grade 2 ankle sprain. What is your concern for Memphis during this 3 to 5 week stretch without Jaren Jackson Jr. and without Ja Morant?
First off, I feel bad for him and Grizzlies fans. I feel bad for us, fans in general, right? Like, Ja Morant is fun to watch. Ja Morant is one of the most entertaining players in the league, and they were going to get more time on national TV than they're not just going to be league pass darlings this season because he's just entertaining. He makes all the plays. He scores in traffic. He shoots over guys. Like, it's so much fun. And now we're not going to see that for 3 to 5 weeks. Look, this was always a consolidation year in my head for them. I'm not sure that they were going to be a playoff team or maybe in the play-in games, but that was going to be about as far as they got. But this just slows development. They don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm sorry. They don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. to start the season. They don't have Ja Morant for a while. They're not going to be very good, but more than that, this just sets back the development of this team, which was what they really needed this year.
Last year, you could see the two stars starting to really gel, and it was almost, especially when they played Portland, you were thinking, okay, could this be one of the young up and coming teams in the league? And then now we're starting to see what happens when they're gone. Like, for me, the question of depth is first and foremost in Memphis. Kyle Anderson has been playing very well for them, putting up a lot of numbers Yeah, slow-mo. In their absence, Dylan Brooks as well has been playing really well. But then outside of that,
yeah, those guys are support players, right? Like in an ideal world, Kyle Anderson is your secondary, third, maybe even third shot creator, right? Like he's a guy who can gets his buckets, gets guys set up in his way, but he's not necessarily the guy you want handling the ball every time down. Dylan Brooks is kind of the same. He works better off the ball, and they're going to be thrust into much larger roles right now. And remember, we can't even look at them. They didn't have a first round pick this year. I mean, they had a second round pick. This was going to be, I think, a Morant and JJJ this year. And without the three, it still will be ultimately when we get past this and we get into, February and everybody's back. But it really sets them back both in terms of making the playoffs and just where they want to be at the end of the season.
Yeah, because when they played against the Nets, the Nets were resting Kyrie and Kevin Durant. They went to overtime, won in overtime down the stretch. And even with Ja playing that first half, it was back and forth. And that to me was a little concerning because I'm thinking, okay, like Kevin and Kyrie, they're putting up like 50 points apiece, 7-11. They're always open. and then now I was thinking, oh my goodness, the Grizzlies are going blow for blow with a starless Nets squad. That can't be necessarily like a good sign of where this team kind of is, as far as in the pantheon. So without Ja and Jaren, in my mind, it's going to be a very, very tough slog the next 3 to 5 weeks. But hopefully some guys will get some development, down the bench. I like hopefully Grayson Allen will get some more opportunities to get back into a rhythm because he has not been shooting well, and he's a shooter.
Just don't play him against Trae Young anymore. Just stop.
Yeah, that little tip on social media.
That goes back. I mean, I remember being at the game in 2018 in Summer League when they had to be separated. This one goes back.
Man, you gotta love an old beef. You gotta love an old beef.
Yeah, they're pretty much that's 50 Cent Ja Rule, right? They're just right there.
And we should just end it with that. That's a mic drop. I can't wait for next week, Kurt. We need some more pop culture references.
Yeah, we'll see. Me throwing out hip hop references will drive everything.
2021 is going to be a great year.